So when the owner came and I was sitting with my back against the wall and my knees to my chest because that felt like the safest position to be in. He began to question me, not out of concern for me, but it seemed like it was more out of, not, I don't want to say disbelief, but there was just an intimate lacking of intimacy. And I never will forget him saying, "So he didn't steal anything?" in this thick German accent that he has. "So he didn't steal anything?" I'm like, I mean, yeah, he stole my safety. Oh, well, yes, of course. I don't know how to do a German accent, but it was as if he could not literally grasp that someone would come to the room for this act and not leave with something tangible, physical, as if this act isn't enough of something to leave with, as if the violation of my body, of my space, of my safety, as if that was not enough of an object to possess. He couldn't seem to grasp that. Because what's the value in that? And my ex is not a very outspoken person unless he is defending himself. When he feels like he needs to defend himself, he has no problem, raising his voice and stepping in and really just causing a disruption. And he, for what it's worth, always feels like he needs to defend himself. However, in this situation, it would have been nice to have a voice raised in my protection from this amateur interrogation that was taking place across a king-size bed in a villa. When you're a person like me, you are fortified. You are somebody who seems to, and I say seems to always have it together. Even when things are falling apart, you somehow manage to keep things from bursting at the seams. This ends up working against you because people seem to always think that you don't need them. People seem to always think that you are invincible, that you are impervious to harm. And we already know that there is something about this that is applied to Black women in general. But even in the personal space, there seems to be this thing where folks really just think, I don't need assistance. I don't need to be embraced. And so often I am embracing myself. I am working through it in my mind because no one is allowing me to talk to them or really able to, or no one's even that really interested in me talking to them to talk through it. And it is no surprise that he saw himself as a victim in this situation as well. And I'm sure many of you do too, as is fair. But I do think that there was something to be said for the violation of my body and how dismantling that can be. My uncle arrives, and so now we're all here in this room, and the owner essentially leaves like, well, I mean, how did this happen? And, we said that they came through the glass door, and he said, well, was it locked? And I mean, obviously it wasn't. And he leaves. And I will say, my uncle really did show up in a manner that was what was needed. It's like the right amount of reverence for the immensity of the situation, for the immensity of the transgression. And what that does is when people do that, it affirms your pain. It affirms your, consternation. It is congruity of affect. So we pack our things and we go to my uncle's spot. And again, I go into caretaker mode because that's really who I am. And I'm, wanting to make sure that, my ex, I'm wanting to make sure that he's okay. And I'm looking at the hand swell. And I know that we are supposed to go to Kenya the next day. So the conversation now becomes, well, what are we going to do about this hand? Is it fractured? And how do we find out? So I reach out to some other people that I know, and we are able to go to a clinic and get seen. And I got to tell y'all, I mean, I really marvel at my, I really do marvel at my resilience, because I've always wondered what happens when people have experienced something like this. Like, what happens to your brain, your heart, your spirit? And I somehow was still stitched together and able to be there and show up for homeboy while he's getting examined. And, they were saying, well, he would have to get x-rays, but then we'd have to go to this place to get x-rays. And he just decided he didn't want to do that. That night, I found myself beginning to doubt. And I don't know if others who have experienced sexual assault have done this before. I'm sure this is a norm, but you start to doubt the reality of what you experienced, almost as if you think, I must have made this up. And I've heard before from a therapist that your brain will go into denial to handle that which it cannot manage at present. And I feel like that's what was happening. My brain was actively trying to convince me that this could not have happened. I mean, he didn't even see dude. So, but I mean, maybe you really did just dream it. I mean, you do remember being in a dream state. But even when I would say that to myself, I could feel the hand inside me. As I sit here today speaking to you, I can still feel it.